Hi, I'm Arlene Lazarro, and I'm going to be teaching a new class come 2022. It's going to be a cold connection class with vintage metals. I know you all have some platters that your grandmother or your mother had, and you don't know what to do with them. Most of them are silver plated. What you might not know is that underneath that silver plate is either solid copper or solid brass or nickel silver. So I'm going to show you what to do with them to upcycle them into some pretty jewelry. This particular piece is what I'm going to be working. We're going to make a pair of earrings similar to these. This came from this platter. I complement them with some copper sheet. The cold connection is the combining of the two metals with rivets. You can see the two rivets and they go through, so there's no heat soldering involved in connecting the metals. If you look over here, some examples of some of the jewelry I created with some, these are both from a platter. This is actually a hinged piece, and you can actually see the copper coming through and your rivets, and also combining some specimens. We'll be introducing stones into some of the pieces. This necklace and earrings came from this teeny little serving platter. You can see where I cut out and used some of the bars also. And this turned into this, just with a little elbow grease. You can see how nice and shiny it got, and I complemented it with brass. So you'll be using multicolored metals. This was from a gallery. I don't have the actual piece, but it was from the gallery of a serving platter. These are both from this candy dish right here, and this was brass underneath. And sometimes some of the silver will still come through. I mean, you can see it was silver plated, but after working it, the brass actually came through. And we will also be making our own earring wires. And this little guy, now this intricate cutout is done with a jeweler's saw. So this came off of this, and that actually was nickel underneath, so you can see how nice and bright the silver stayed in. Once I worked it, all that intricate engraving came out. And then I just made a little turtle bezel with copper and set that beautiful piece of chrysocolla. So it's a fun class, and what we're going to do today is cut up this, which was just a hot plate. I popped off the little knobs, and I like to use scissors a lot. So I kind of marked, I started one and I took down a lot, and you can see that it is brass underneath this silver plate. So I'm just going to cut out that little filigree piece, and then it's just a lot of finishing, and then we'll be riveting it to just a copper disc. Okay, so I'm just going to take these scissors, and we need my optimizers. And it's softer than it's pretty hard, but it's not as hard as you think it might be. And you could do this with a jeweler's saw, but this is so much quicker. Okay. So that's pretty much the outline. I need to do a little filing. So we just use Bastard to take down some of the rough. And then I'm going to go over to the wheels and use some power to make things move a little bit quicker. You notice I'm just going one way with my file. And try to get them as close as possible to the one I already did. So I'll just check and see if I need to take a lot off. So I actually rounded that one a little bit more, so I'm just going to, a little too much to take off with the file, so I'll cut it off. Okay, so I want to go over to the polisher. Okay, so from wear and tear of using these platters and hot plates and whatever, they get really scratched. So we're going to use a Kratex wheel, which I just threw right on the polisher, to take down the edges and take down some of those scratches. And then I'm going to use the AAA wheel and polish out the scratches I'm going to be making with the Kratex. And it's also going to soften the edges of the metal. Reminds me of when you like get keys made in the olden days when they used to take down the edges of the rough keys. Okay. So now I'm just going to take down the surface, and I grabbed a piece of leather before. Give me 1 second. Plus the metal is going to get hot, and I like to just use a piece of leather to protect my hands also. But you can see the brass coming through. So all that plate, there's a nice solid piece of brass underneath. And I like to leave some of the silver on because it kind of makes it more interesting. So we'll have 3 colors, the silver plate, the brass, and copper. The earrings and okay, so that's pretty clean. You see one little spot there. Now I'm going to go over to the wheel and throw some triply wheel and put some rouge on it. And now this, oopsie. Now I made some scratches. I got the deep scratches out that were from wear and tear with the Kratex wheel. And now I'm going to get those fine scratches out and polish it with the AAA. Beautiful So now once I get that to the polish that I want, I'm going to go back and I prep this one a little bit. So we'll use, turn the pedal on. Now you can see there's 2 holes already there, and I wanted a 3rd one because that's not enough to connect it to the disc. So, you know, we just have, these are 1 1/4 discs, 24 gauge copper, and it fits nicely with some overhang, but I do need to put another hole. So I already drilled that hole, but now I need to drill, in order to cold connect, and I have these nice 3/32 kind of a domed solid copper rivets that fit perfectly in the hole that was already there, and give it a nice texture and dimension on the top. So we need to go over to the drill press. So what I like to do, I cheat a little bit. I like to use the poster putty to just put these 2 pieces together so I don't have to keep going back and forth, drill, rivet, which is kind of how I originally was taught, but I always look for shortcuts, and this is one of my shortcuts. Okay, so before I can drill it, I need to make a little divot to make sure it goes where I want it to. So I'm just going to use the center punch and do all 3 at once. I'm just going to go right in the middle there, on top of the anvil. And I already have the drill set with the 3/32. I make a little cheat sheet for myself, so I know what I need to use. I have different size drill bits, different size hand punches, and I know that I need a 3/32. That's my little 3/32 hole. And I have one for each of my students when you take my class. Okay, so give me a minute and we're gonna go outside and, ready? All right, so this is just gonna take a minute. I already put the 3/32 in there, chunk of wood so I don't have something to drill into, and turn it on, and 1, 2, 3, it's gonna go right through those holes, the original holes. And if those holes weren't there, I would drill the brass piece first and then always go to the second underneath piece. Okay, you can see that goes right through and back inside. Okay. Okay, so I've drilled the 3 holes, and I'm going to rivet the plate to the disc, and I've got a little bit of spurs in the back. So I'm actually going to take this apart at this point and get that little poster putty off of there. I like to use a little alcohol, make sure that all comes off. So the little spurs on the back, I'm just going to see if I can get it off. Yeah, they're pretty big. All right, so I'm going to need to file them off, because I want a nice smooth back for my rivet. Okay. Now you could texture this or stamp this if you wanted to. I kind of like the shiny. We won't have time to tumble it, but once it's all done, I'll throw it in the tumbler, and really all those little scratches and whatever I missed will come out. And I liver sulfured this copper. You can do that afterwards. The plate and the brass won't take the liver sulfur, so I always do that last. And then I could just steel wool it down. So now I've got this ready to rivet. I'm going to line up my holes because it's only going to fit one way. And that's the way. So I'll do one at a time. Now this little guy, this little anvil, has a little divot in it for the bulb. Okay, this is a little tight. So that can happen because depending upon where you buy your drill bits, guess what? They're not always perfect. It's not the same drill bit I drilled my little hole with. I'd rather have it a little tight than loose because you want a nice tight. So I'm just gonna get my little reamer and give it a little ream. It's just a little bit tight. I want it nice and snug because that's when it's gonna keep the rivet in. Okay, so now it goes through. Do all three. Ta-da. Okay, let's do this again. There it is. Okay. Okay. So I don't want to ruin that. So you can kind of see, I actually put a little poster putty in it to make sure it doesn't mar it. So I only want 1 millimeter to be sticking up. I'm wasting a lot of copper, but this little credit card, this is a little Kim St. Jean trick. I just drilled a hole in it, and that thickness of this credit card is all I need to stick up for me to rivet this. Okay. So I'm actually just gonna take my side cutters and hold that so it doesn't go flying in somebody's eye, because I'm famous for that. I wanna make sure that's the same height, and it is. If it wasn't, I would just take a little and just give it a little. Too high is no good either. So I see that my holes are still lined up, but just in case they're not, I'm not going to rivet it all the way till I do all three, in case something goes off. So I'm just going to use a 4-ounce ball peen hammer and just spread the back of the rivet that's sticking through. And I just do 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Boom, 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 until I get it spread enough. Now, if you look, you can see that it's spread. You can see that. It's just spread enough that it's not going to fall off. So that's all I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other two. And then I'll smack them down. I'm going to get nice and tight. it a little. And you don't want too much metal sticking up because it just makes a mess in the back. And this is a noisy class. But it's fun to just take something old and make it new again. It'll be all kinds of metals that we can find. I find stuff at thrift stores and yard sales. I got some pipe off a plumber. I mean, just things that you find around. Old brass buttons we'll be making things with. That one's up a little bit, so I'm going to definitely file that. Okay, so they're all semi-riveted, and you can see the nice little dimension it gave to the what will soon be an earring. So I am now going to, you don't want those sticking up, so we're gonna smack them down good now. Okay, so it's pretty low, and I'm going to take my ball peen now and just go around the edge and just soften that edge. I'm trying not to ruin that pretty bowl dome that's on the other side. It's a little high. Okay, they're pretty smooth. I mean, once these are taken down, you can always go back to the Cratex and just soften that edge again. Okay, so these two pieces of metal are not coming apart. These rivets have been spread. You can see that they're way wider than the 3/32 that they started out to be, and these are not coming apart. Okay, to make them into earrings, I need a hole either at the top, at the tip. You can see some brass coming through. I think I was going to do it that way, but I don't think I have enough brass sticking up. So I think what I'm going to do is make my hole for my earring at the top. Again, I'm just going to give it a little center punch where I want it to go, and you can mark it so you know where you're going to go with it, because okay, and now we have to go out to the drill again, so just give me a minute. Okay, so I've drilled the hole. You can see it. I put it at the top here, but it's kind of flat looking. So I've got these doming mushroom block that I'm just going to give it a little curve. Make it a little more interesting. So I think I could just do it with this bad boy. Okay. You can see it started curving. I'm killing my knobs, but that's all right. Okay. So I squished my knobs a little bit, but they still look good. So I gave it a little curve just to make it a little more interesting. And what I have here is 20 gauge wire to make my ear wires. And pretty much I used 3 tools to do that. I usually like to ball end them, but we have a little torch problem, so we're just gonna make it a simple earring wire. All right, so this is about 2 3/4. It's a little long without doing the ball, but I'm gonna just use my round nose to make a little. I like to call them peas. Okay, and that's pretty much where you want it big enough to get how much metal is left above the hole. So if it's too small, it's going to get stuck. So you want to make sure there's enough. I'm just going to check it before I finish the earring. Because if it doesn't have clearance, okay, you don't get that little wiggle and it'll keep getting stuck. It's just annoying. Okay, so we got our little P. And I'm going to get the little wrapping taps. And I like a big chunky ear wire. So I kind of have that little P up against the covered area. And I'm using the largest of the mandrel. And pretty much just using my thumb. Okay. And this is half hard wire, 20 gauge, sterling silver. So that's my little ear wire. And it's got a pretty big tail because I did give myself enough to do the ball, which I didn't do. And then I like to take my little flat nose and just give it a little curve. And so nobody pinches themselves. This is just a little tool that will soften that edge. You can just use a file. And we're going to open it back up and drop that bad boy on there. And this will go in the tumbler. And all the little extra scratches that we just made. And the black will all come off. And you have something new from something old. That's it.